Hey friends, I'm Jason Collins. I'm the pastor at St. Paul's Church in Conway, South Carolina, and I want to welcome you to our study of the book of Hebrews. It's called Jesus is Better. In this introduction video, I just want to set you up for success so you'll know what to expect and what you'll need for this to be a study that will really help you grow in your faith and grow in your discipleship and your fellowship with other Christians who are trying to grow closer to Jesus together. So first of all, you're going to need a Bible because you're going to read the book of Hebrews in the New Testament along, one chapter a week. And you're going to need this workbook, which if you have picked one up from the church, you'll have a written copy, or you can have an electronic copy, but this is going to help guide us through our study each week. You're going to read the chapter and then answer some questions and prepare ahead of time. And then on Wednesdays, we're going to gather in the church, or some of you will be gathering online, and we'll watch this teaching video and then we'll have discussion afterwards. So if you go ahead and do your prep work, that will make our discussion go so much better because we'll all be prepared. I just want to give you a little background information about Hebrews just so you'll know what you're getting into, and I hope this will help you to dive in deeper. So we refer to Hebrews oftentimes as a book of the Bible, but actually Hebrews was originally written as a letter, and it's a special type of letter. It's an epistle, and in a lot of ways an epistle letter is much like a sermon. So the author was writing to a particular group of people, and he's mailed them the letter, and they were to read it and pass it around and share it with other people. So we oftentimes refer to it as a book, but it's really a letter. As far as authorship of this letter, it's anonymous. The author does not take credit for his writing in the New Testament. It doesn't really matter because just because we don't exactly know who the author was doesn't mean that it wasn't divinely inspired. Through the years, many biblical scholars have had different ideas as to who the author of this letter could be. Many have said it was the Apostle Paul, who our church is named after. Some have suggested Barnabas, who was Paul's missionary partner on his first mission journey. Some have suggested Apollos, who we read about in the book of Acts. Some have suggested maybe Priscilla, because Priscilla was a Jew who became a Christian who was living in Rome for a period of time. The bottom line is we don't know who the author is, but just because we don't know who wrote it doesn't mean that it's not worthy enough to be in the New Testament and be a part of our Christian faith. We do know who received this letter, and the author says that this is a letter to the Hebrews. And so the author wrote this letter to people who were Christians, but who were ethnically Jewish. So these were Jews who had been following the traditions of Israel and worshiping in that fashion of Judaism, but they met Jesus and they became followers of Jesus. They became Christians. So it's addressed to the Hebrews because that would be a form of addressing people of a Jewish background who had become Christians. Now, it always helps to know why something was done. And so the why for Hebrews was the fact that these are Jewish Christians living in a time of persecution. This is early in the church, early in the history of Christianity, and these Jewish Christians were being persecuted. They were under the authority of the Roman government, and so Jewish Christians were persecuted by the government because Rome authorized certain religions, and Christianity at this time was illegal. So they were persecuted by the Romans. They were also persecuted by Jews because the Jews thought that these Jewish Christians had abandoned their Jewish heritage to take on something new, and they thought that was wrong. So they were being persecuted from all angles. And quite honestly, when you're under stress and you're being persecuted and your livelihood is affected, your family's affected, these people were falling away from the faith. They were maybe reverting back to Judaism and kind of dropping their faith in Jesus. And so the author wrote to these persecuted Christians to help them to stand firm in faith because Jesus completed their Judaism, because Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. That's really helpful for us these days because we've been enduring a pandemic and a rocky election season. We've just experienced turmoil in our capital, and we've had race problems and we've had economic problems. And so all these outside pressures are weighing on all of us. And so this study is to encourage you to stand firm, persevere, trust in God, keep your hope in Jesus, because ultimately He's better than anything else we could put our hope in. Now, the last question is, when was this letter written? And again, we're not 100% sure, but because the author of this letter writes a lot about Judaism and worship in the temple, then it's quite possible that this letter was written before the Jewish temple in Jerusalem was destroyed. The Roman general Titus invaded Israel and took over the capital of Jerusalem in 70 AD, and at that time Titus destroyed the temple. The temple hasn't been rebuilt since. The author speaks a lot about the temple, but doesn't talk about the temple being destroyed. So generally speaking, we believe that the book of Hebrews, the letter of Hebrews, was written to Jewish Christians sometime between 60 and 70 AD before the temple was destroyed. With that, you have a pretty good background into the writing of the book of Hebrews. Ultimately, I hope that what you're going to find is that Jesus is better. Jesus is better than anything else you could hope in or put your faith in. So in the midst of hard times and persecutions and difficult circumstances, stand firm in Jesus, because Jesus is better. In fact, you'll see Jesus is best. God bless you in this study, and I look forward to seeing what He's going to do for you and through you.